You were told sugar is the enemy, but that belief hides a far more destructive biological truth. Sugar is not the disease. Insulin is the overused key that stopped working properly. Most people chase lower blood glucose while ignoring chronically elevated insulin-destroying tissues silently. This condition is called hyperinsulinemia, and it damages blood vessels long before glucose rises. Long before diabetes is diagnosed, insulin is already flooding cells that stopped responding. This is why normal blood sugar can coexist with progressing metabolic disease for years. Professor Roy Taylor's twin cycle hypothesis explains this process with uncomfortable clarity. Your body has a personal fat threshold beyond which fat spills into organs never designed to store it. Excess fat first invades the liver, impairing insulin signaling and increasing glucose output. Then, fat reaches the pancreas, poisoning beta cells responsible for insulin secretion accuracy. This is not a sudden failure. It is a slow metabolic suffocation caused by energy overload. In the first days of dietary change, something dramatic but misleading happens quickly. Carbohydrate intake drops, and the liver begins emptying its glycogen reserves immediately. Glycogen is stored glucose, and it binds water tightly inside liver and muscle tissue. For every gram of glycogen burned, 3 to 4 grams of water are released. This is why the scale drops rapidly during the first week, sometimes shockingly fast. 2 or 3 kilograms vanish, creating powerful hope and dangerous misunderstanding simultaneously. This weight loss is not fat loss. It is water leaving with depleted glycogen stores. Your metabolism has not healed yet. It has simply changed its fuel availability temporarily. Blood sugar readings often improve dramatically during this phase, reinforcing false confidence. This is the honeymoon illusion, where numbers improve faster than cellular damage repairs. Insulin levels may still be dangerously high, even while glucose readings look better. Hyperinsulinemia continues stressing arteries, kidneys, and nerves beneath improving lab results. This is why treating diabetes by glucose alone is like silencing an alarm, not extinguishing fire. Real reversal requires lowering insulin, not just managing blood sugar appearances. That process is slower, deeper, and far less emotionally rewarding at first. During these days, your body is not healed. It is destabilized intentionally. Stored fuel is being unlocked, and systems accustomed to sugar panic briefly. This discomfort is not failure. It is the opening act of metabolic restructuring. But misunderstanding this phase leads many to quit or make dangerous assumptions. If you celebrate too early, you may miss the warning signs ahead, because the real work begins when easy weight loss stops and resistance fights back. That battle unfolds between days 7 and 30, and it is far less flattering. Before you move on, leave a 1 if this reframed diabetes story surprised you today. If you want the next part explaining the hardest phase, leave a 1 so I know. Days 7 through 30 are the hardest, because comfort disappears before true metabolic stability arrives. Fatigue, trembling, brain fog, and relentless sugar cravings convince many people something is going wrong. This phase feels frightening because the body withdraws from its most familiar and addictive fuel. When carbohydrates vanish completely, the liver initiates gluconeogenesis to defend blood glucose aggressively systemically. Protein and fat become emergency substrates, converted into glucose despite significant metabolic inefficiency costs involved. This biochemical pivot alarms the nervous system, producing weakness, dizziness, irritability, and overwhelming exhaustion. Meanwhile, insulin levels fall, and kidneys respond by excreting sodium at unusually high rates. This natriuresis drags potassium and magnesium with it, destabilizing nerves and muscles throughout the body. The resulting constellation of symptoms is often mislabeled keto flu, despite being predictable physiology. Feeling worse does not mean diabetes is worsening. It means fuel switching is underway. If everything feels comfortable, insulin reduction may be insufficient to trigger meaningful metabolic change. Cravings during this window reflect conditioned dopamine circuits screaming for familiar glucose rewards again. Giving in here restarts the cycle, reinforcing insulin resistance and prolonging disease progression unnecessarily. Endocrinologists observe this struggle routinely when patients abandon therapy during the adaptation phase early. The liver is not rebelling, it is relearning how to supply energy responsibly again. Electrolyte support, hydration, and patience dramatically reduce symptoms without interrupting insulin-lowering process itself. This is the phase where discipline matters more than enthusiasm or motivational slogans alone. Each difficult day weakens insulin's grip and forces metabolic flexibility to reemerge across tissues. What feels like regression is actually the sound of old dependencies breaking apart internally. By the end of this phase, fat oxidation becomes reliable enough to support daily function. Hunger quiets intermittently, mental clarity flickers, and energy stops collapsing completely during mornings again. These are early signals that metabolic switching is succeeding beneath uncomfortable sensations you notice. However, a new confusion often appears next, catching people off guard unexpectedly in mornings. Blood glucose may rise at dawn, even without food, provoking fear and doubt temporarily. This phenomenon does not signal failure. It signals the liver entering cleanup mode properly. Understanding this prepares you for the 30 to 60-day phase, where progress looks misleading initially. Do not quit here, because this turbulence precedes the most meaningful improvements for health. What comes next explains why persistence suddenly feels rewarded rather than punished by biology. One morning you wake up, test blood glucose, and see a number that feels deeply discouraging. You ate nothing overnight, followed the plan, yet the meter tells a different story. This is called the dawn phenomenon, and it frightens people into abandoning progress prematurely. Blood glucose rises at dawn because hormones prepare the body for waking and movement. Cortisol increases first, followed by growth hormone, both signaling the liver to release energy. The liver responds by releasing stored glucose, even when dietary intake remains strictly controlled. This response is not sabotage. It is a normal survival program resurfacing under new conditions. During early reversal, the liver still contains excess fat and stored glucose residues. As insulin sensitivity improves, the liver finally feels safe enough to empty these reserves. That emptying can temporarily elevate morning glucose, creating the illusion of regression. Here is the critical insight most people never hear during this confusing phase. A rising dawn glucose at this stage often means the liver is cleaning house. For years, excess glucose was trapped inside fatty liver tissue, inaccessible and metabolically toxic. Now that insulin resistance is easing, the liver releases what it has been hoarding. This glucose is not staying. It is being burned throughout the day efficiently again. At the same time, hepatic lipid reduction accelerates beneath the surface quietly. Visceral fat surrounding the liver begins shrinking, reducing inflammatory signaling dramatically over weeks. As liver fat drops below critical thresholds, insulin sensitivity improves sharply and reliably. Research shows when liver fat falls under 5%, glucose regulation stabilizes profoundly. This is the turning point where numbers stop lying and start reflecting real healing. Morning glucose spikes gradually soften, then flatten, without additional effort or intervention. Many people miss this milestone because fear convinces them to change strategies too soon. Patience here is not passive. It is an active decision to let physiology finish speaking. Chasing numbers during this phase disrupts processes already moving in the right direction. The body needs time to drain decades of excess safely, not overnight heroics. By the end of 60 days, patterns begin replacing chaos predictably and consistently. Fasting glucose trends downward, post-meal spikes shrink, and recovery accelerates naturally. More importantly, insulin demand decreases, reducing stress on every metabolic tissue involved. This phase is quieter than the beginning. but far more meaningful biologically. You may feel less dramatic change, yet organs are finally coordinating properly again. The liver, once overwhelmed, is stepping back from emergency mode slowly. That retreat allows the pancreas to experience something unfamiliar, relief from constant pressure. And when that pressure lifts, Dean, another remarkable process begins inside beta cells themselves. That process challenges everything you were told about diabetes being irreversible forever. For years, you were told pancreatic beta cells die permanently, making diabetes a lifelong sentence. That belief is outdated, incomplete, and quietly contradicted by modern metabolic research. Beta cells rarely die first. They retreat into a protective shutdown state under toxic conditions. This process is called redifferentiation, where cells stop performing to avoid further damage. Chronic glucose and fat overload create glucotoxicity and lipotoxicity inside pancreatic tissue relentlessly. To survive, beta cells reduce insulin secretion, sacrificing function to preserve cellular integrity. This looks like failure, but it is actually a defensive biological decision. And as liver fat decreases and insulin resistance resolves, the toxic pressure finally lifts. Fat stored around the pancreas begins mobilizing, restoring local signaling environments gradually. With reduced fat exposure, beta cells sense safety and begin redifferentiating again. This recovery is not dramatic. It unfolds quietly over weeks of metabolic stability. One of the earliest signs is the return of first-phase insulin response. This is the rapid insulin release immediately after eating, lost early in diabetes progression. Its return means meals no longer cause prolonged glucose spikes, requiring medication correction. Instead of delayed insulin flooding, the body responds precisely and proportionally again. This change dramatically reduces oxidative stress inside blood vessels and peripheral tissues. HbA1c values begin reflecting this improvement weeks later, confirming sustained glucose control. Importantly, this recovery does not mean unlimited dietary freedom has returned permanently. Beta cells recover within boundaries, not permission to resume metabolic overload behaviors. This phase represents remission, not cure, and that distinction matters enormously going forward. Many people misinterpret improvement as immunity, repeating habits that caused damage originally. When overload returns, beta cells retreat again, often faster and more severely. The window between 60 and 90 days is therefore psychologically dangerous, not physiologically. Confidence rises faster than resilience, creating temptation to test boundaries prematurely again. Medical supervision becomes essential here, and especially for medication adjustment and monitoring safety. Insulin doses and secretagogues can become excessive as endogenous insulin production returns. Without adjustment, hypoglycemia risk increases unexpectedly. Despite improving overall health markers, this is why deprescribing must occur deliberately, not reactively or independently alone. The pancreas is forgiving, but it remembers past insults and adapts accordingly. Recovery here is conditional on continued insulin reduction and metabolic consistency. If stability holds, beta cells strengthen their response over subsequent months gradually. Energy improves, hunger normalizes, and glucose variability shrinks across daily patterns. This is where reversal stops feeling theoretical and begins feeling lived in. But this progress carries responsibility, because improper management can reverse gains quickly. The next section addresses the most dangerous phase, when healing makes old medications hazardous. Understanding that risk protects the recovery you worked so hard to achieve. One of the most dangerous moments in diabetes reversal arrives precisely when things start improving quickly. As insulin sensitivity returns, medications designed for resistance can suddenly become dangerously excessive. Drugs that once barely worked may now push glucose far below safe physiological thresholds. This creates hypoglycemia, a state far more immediately life-threatening than moderate hyperglycemia ever was. Symptoms include confusion, tremors, sweating, palpitations, seizures, and loss of consciousness abruptly. Sulfonylureas are especially risky because they force insulin release regardless of actual glucose need. Injected insulin carries similar danger when endogenous insulin production quietly resumes underneath treatment. Many patients assume lower numbers mean success, not realizing they are overdosing unintentionally. This is why medical deprescribing must accompany reversal, not trail behind it passively. Deprescribing means systematically reducing medication as physiology changes, under clinical supervision always. Doing this alone, without guidance, turns a healing process into a medical emergency risk. Another overlooked danger involves SGLT2 inhibitors during aggressive carbohydrate restriction or fasting protocols. These drugs increase ketone production while masking hyperglycemia, creating euglycemic ketoacidosis risk. Blood sugar may appear normal, while blood acidity rises to dangerous levels silently. This condition is rare but deadly, and symptoms are often misinterpreted initially. Nausea, abdominal pain, rapid breathing, and fatigue should never be ignored during reversal. Kidney health adds another layer of complexity, requiring careful monitoring during dietary changes. Protein intake, electrolyte shifts, and dehydration stress kidneys already damaged by diabetes often. NIH, nephrology research emphasizes gradual change when chronic kidney disease is present. Rapid metabolic shifts can worsen filtration rates temporarily if not carefully managed clinically. This does not mean reversal is unsafe. It means unsupervised reversal is unsafe. The faster improvement occurs, the greater the responsibility to adjust treatment intelligently. Doctors are not obstacles here. They are safety engineers during a volatile transition. Bring data, trends, and symptoms to appointments, not just enthusiasm or online advice. True empowerment includes knowing when expertise is necessary to protect progress already made. Ignoring safety turns hope into hubris, and biology punishes hubris consistently and harshly. This phase tests maturity, not motivation, and separates sustainable reversal from short-lived success. When navigated correctly, medication reduction feels calm, controlled, and deeply reassuring. When mishandled, it becomes the reason reversal stories end in emergency rooms. Safety is not optional during healing. It is the framework that allows healing to continue. The final phase asks a deeper question. What happens after 90 days actually end? Because reversal is not a finish line. It is a transition into a different life. After 90 days, many people expect a finish line, a cure, or permanent metabolic immunity. That expectation is the most dangerous misunderstanding of diabetes reversal pathways today. Reversal does not erase vulnerability. It exposes it clearly for the first time. Your body now remembers how easily metabolic overload once broke internal regulation systems. This memory is called metabolic memory, and it lowers your margin for future excess. Your personal fat threshold remains lower than someone who never developed insulin resistance. Cross it again, and diabetes does not return slowly or politely. It comes back faster, harsher, and more resistant to intervention than before. This is why reversal must evolve into a lifestyle, not a temporary protocol. The good news is that maintenance is far easier than the initial transformation phase. Insulin sensitivity, once restored, requires consistency rather than intensity to remain stable. You no longer need extreme restriction, but you cannot return to constant excess safely. Your future depends on rhythm, not perfection or punishment-driven discipline. Regular movement, controlled carbohydrate exposure, and metabolic pauses protect long-term stability. Periodic fasting can remain a tool, but never again a desperate corrective weapon. Food becomes information again, not an emotional anesthetic or metabolic threat constantly. Energy levels stabilize, hunger signals normalize, and mental clarity becomes the baseline state. Many people report something deeper returning, trust in their own body again. That trust was broken by years of unpredictable glucose, medications, and fatigue cycles. Now, numbers align with how you feel, instead of contradicting daily experience constantly. This alignment is the true reward of reversal, not laboratory values alone. However, vigilance must replace fear, not disappear entirely after improvement occurs. Regular monitoring remains necessary, not because you are sick, but because you are informed. Ignoring trends invites relapse. Observing trends prevents escalation before damage resumes. This is not anxiety, it is stewardship of a system that proved resilient when respected. Your body is not weak, it adapted to an environment it was never designed for. Remove the wrong fuel, restore proper signaling, and healing followed predictably. That does not make you cured. It makes you responsible for maintaining conditions. 90 days was the intervention phase, not the full story of recovery. What follows is a lifetime of informed choices that no longer feel restrictive. You gain freedom from medications, but not freedom from biological laws governing energy storage. The difference now is awareness replaces ignorance, and choice replaces compulsion. You are no longer fighting your body, you are cooperating with its design intelligently. That cooperation is what sustains remission, energy, and independence long-term. Diabetes reversal is not about defeating disease, it is about restoring relationship. A relationship between fuel, hormones, and cells that finally makes sense again. If you return to chaos, the relationship breaks. If you respect it, stability follows. This is not a warning meant to scare, but clarity meant to protect you. Your body healed because you stopped feeding it the wrong signals repeatedly. Continue doing that, and 90 days becomes the beginning, not the highlight. If this series helped you see diabetes differently, leave a 1 so I know.